Hello, and welcome to Arts and Letters, a virtual space to discuss art, words, and ideas with artists, authors, and creatives of all kinds. When asked by a reporter from the Paris Review what compelled him to rewrite the ending of A Farewell to Arms 39 times, Ernest Hemingway replied, "Getting the words right." So the secret to all writing is good revision. But there are other secrets only writers know, and each writer's secrets are his or her own way of creating the space, place, time, energy, and commitment to writing. This discussion, Getting the Words Right, focuses on the questions writers must ask themselves: the who, what, where, when, why, and how of their writer's life. I will be joined shortly first by Dr. Frank DeLuca, author of Kindness, a Guide for Humans based on the Enneagram. And in the second segment, Jean Lukemire, author of Inside the Mind of Martin Mueller and Penitentiary Tales, a Love Story. But I will give you more information on them in a few minutes. First, I would like to set the stage for the event this evening by sharing with you briefly, as a writer, my thoughts about who, what, where, when, why, and how. Who, to me, means two basic things. Who is my biggest fan, my closest ally, and who is my audience? My husband, David, certainly qualifies as the most important person in my writing process, besides me. But I am a better writer because of his love and support and understanding of those moments when I tune out the world and tune into a story. My early readers are also very important because they keep me honest. And who is my audience? I write stories that I want to read. One writing coach that I follow said, "Write the book you want to read because you will read it 75 times." So I guess my audience is people like me who like to hear about other people and how they make their way each day in life with all its dramatics. So what I write is pretty eclectic, from recipes to memoirs and made-up worlds in which people react and love and play. Where? Two key places in our home envelop me in a writing cocoon. My desk in the studio kind of toggles back and forth. LVP, Lucky Valley Press, me, Lucky Valley Press, me. But when I give myself a whole day, the bed is propped up, I'm all comfy, I'm nestled into it. It's a total little wonderful cocoon. When is trickier. As a part of the Lucky Valley Press duo, I sometimes juggle 3 or 4 clients at a time. So my writing time is get it when you can. I set times for my own writing, like before 10 a.m. and after 4, or today, all day, or Sunday, 10 to 4. If I make dates with myself to write, I really keep them. Like to keep dates. Why do I write? I write because I love to write. I love sharing recipes. I love making up worlds. I totally love making up stuff. And I kind of fall in love with my characters. So they're all floating around in my head. And I can't wait to get what they say down on paper. How is the easiest? I sit down, I read through the scenes or whatever I wrote from the previous session, and then I write garbage until it becomes beautiful. And I do it over and over, honing it and nudging it, and sometimes just sitting with the invisible muse. Rewrite 39 times? Read it 75 times? Probably more like 100. So that is sort of my world in a nutshell when it comes to writing. And I have asked Dr. Luca and Jean Lukemire to give me their take on their writing process in relationship to these 6 words. So Dr. Frank DeLuca has been facilitating classes and workshops in self-awareness since 1976. For most of those years, the Enneagram has informed his work as a marriage and family therapist, a leadership coach, and a corporate consultant. Now semi-retired, Frank provides guidance and training to several nonprofits and around Jacksonville, where he lives with his partner, Ken Gregg. He says creative projects and writing have become a central part of his life, including posting poetry for passersby to see in the front windows of the 1850s former saloon where he and Ken live. I'd like to introduce now Dr. Frank DeLuca, who's going to join me.
That was a great intro. Thank you.
Thank you. Did it give you any prompts?
Oh, yeah, but to hear you, because anyway, it's fascinating how much I can get just by listening to some of the things you said. And I hope people get that from me, because yes. I think let's see, what do I say? When you gave me the questions about who, what, when, where, how, and why, oh, okay. But it forced me to think about what I do, because I do it and I don't really think about it. Mm-hmm. So this gave me a chance to think through it. And I'm kind of surprised by how much structure I actually have without knowing that I use it. And so I'll tell you what I mean. I kind of mixed up the questions. So I'm going to start with when, which you just talked about.
Okay.
Okay, I write when I feel like it. And I also write when I don't feel like it. And I have to know the difference between the two. If I only wrote when I felt like it, I wouldn't write. And if I only wrote when I didn't feel like it, did I just say that right?
Yeah.
Doing both. So there's kind of a balance. Sometimes I just know, get to the computer, get going. And sometimes I know I'm exhausted or it's just not happening. So I've learned that a particular time of day or things like that don't work for me. But I do find that, especially writing that book, which took 3.5 years, I didn't work on it all the time. I had to take breaks from it. And in the daytimes when I was writing, I have a very slow morning or getting emails or other things done. And then maybe about noon or 1, I would go upstairs to the studio and I would work on it for 3 hours, 4 hours, and then stop. And I found that more than 3 to 4 hours was just, I couldn't do. Some days I did, but most of the time, that's what it was.
Yeah, you really have to give yourself breaks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's stick with this minute. Do you, so even when you don't like to write, you will go and sit with the muse at your computer and just kind of wait for it? Or do you start writing garbage, or how do you do that?
Yeah, well, you got to do garbage. But when I don't feel, you know what it was when I was with the book, it becomes this live entity that you're living with. And
oh, absolutely.
Feed the beast,
Yes.
So there would be times when I thought, okay, I'm going to give you a half hour. I'm just going to touch it. It was just like, if I touch it today, at least I have kept it alive, and otherwise it will wither up and die, or I'll forget about it. And a lot of times I did forget about it, and I'd come back and say, oh, this is terrible, or that was really brilliant. And I never knew what I was going to find. So I kind of had to, since I tend to be disciplined about a lot of things, I had to learn not to be as disciplined about writing. It would crush me.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Because otherwise it would be effort. And there were times I did effort, but really I had to let it, had to follow what just seemed like, how do I have a respectful relationship to this project? And touch it, and sometimes let it go, and know that I will get back, and sometimes total despair, right? I can't look at this thing. So that was a part of it. Anyway, so that's what I have to say about when.
Well, just one more thing. You have, let's say you have your week. Mm-hmm. Do you ever plan ahead and say, okay, tomorrow I plan to devote my whole day to this, mm-hmm. or I need to sit down and knock this out right now, and I need 20 minutes. I'm just going to do 20 minutes at a time. Do you schedule or create spaces for yourself to do that, or do you just kind of show up in the day and see what happens?
Yes, I do that. I will say, okay, today is a writing day, or this week I'm really going to focus on just the whole week. It rarely happens that way though, because there's life interrupts. So
Yeah.
even to prepare for this, I can't believe the things that came in even today of calls. I don't know, I need to take this. So I just have had, that's why it takes longer maybe to get things done than I would normally do. But yes, I do have certain times. But again, I have to be somewhat flexible with it, or I'll beat myself up for not meeting my own goals and my own schedule. So that's what I do.
Okay.
Interesting when I ask where I write, and I realized I write in 6 places.
Great.
Here, I'll give you the 6 places and tell you how I use them.
Okay.
The floor,
Wow.
the sofa, my stand-up writing desk, my computer desk, coffee houses, and the woodlands.
Wow.
So 3 of those are the actual writing, and 3 of those are what I'd call the incubating or digesting or reprocessing times. So let's start with the floor. And so the floor, right next to my stand-up writing table, is where I meditate or do yoga or do things that kind of just bring me in. And oftentimes now there's 2 kinds of writing for me, because one is I guess it's called nonfiction, but the book I just wrote on the Enneagram and kindness, and the other is poetry. And I have 2 different disciplines around them. So with if I'm sitting there, sometimes with poetry, for example, I will get a prompt, I will get a word. There's a poem that ends in my book called For the First Time Again. And I just sat there and that phrase came to me. So sometimes I will just let it sit, or I will jump up from the meditation cushion to my writing desk and try to capture and write down that phrase. And then I kind of go, well, what's this about? What do you want me to do with this? So I try to see where it leads, and I work with that. So that's when I get up to the stand-up. And then the computer desk, sometimes I will start at the stand-up table and do free writing. Poetry especially, I do that way. If I'm stuck, I'll just write with my hand and let it go completely freely. And then with poetry, I will reach a moment where I've kind of exhausted all these random thoughts, and I will then go to the computer desk and type them in and then arrange them like a puzzle and see what makes any sense. And then I will refine it a bit, but sometimes not too much. And the other writing area is the coffee house, which I use in emergencies, meaning that if I feel really stuck, I haven't been back to writing for a while, I know there's a section I want to get done, I just can't pull it out, I will go out of the house and I will go to a coffee, not as recently, truthfully, with the good bean or anything, but I learned that when I was in graduate school writing papers all the time, that I would go to the USF Lone Mountain campus reading room, which is a beautiful Gothic building with leaded glass windows and high ceilings and big library tables with the library lights. And I would sit there and I would say, you have to stay here until you get this paper done or get through it. And that kind of helps me sometimes. So I have to change venues. Mm-hmm. So those are actually what I do writing. The other 3 are the incubation, which I have found to be just as important. Mm-hmm. So the floor is one of those, as I said, where I kind of let things come through. And the sofa is the other. And I usually use the sofa. I don't use it in the morning. I only use it in the afternoon. And it's only after I've been writing. And so I feel like I've done what I can do, stop. And I lie down, I put headsets on, I get a heating pad, I get my blanket, depends on the season. I have the skylights above me and I put on music and then I just let myself drift. And often that is the time when what I have just written percolates through and I think, oh, no, that's not it. Or, oh, that's really good. Come back to that. Or sometimes another thought comes in and I have my phone next to me and I dictate the thoughts and say, go back to that later. So I find that really helps. And often before the sofa, I do a walk in the woodlands. And walking helps after I've been sitting especially. And being in nature and breathing and moving, I get lots of things in that. And there's where I feel like I touch on what's true. Because for me, I kind of come to see that, and I've heard this from other people, it wasn't my original idea, but that good writing is true writing. And I'm the one who knows how true it is. It has to feel right somehow in me. And as you talked about garbage, I write plenty of things like, oh, this is brilliant. Oh my God, I can't, this goes out, people are going to stop. This was the most amazing Enneagram book anyone has ever come to. And with the International Enneagram Conference, it's like standing ovations that I have totally transformed this whole understanding of this work. That passes. And then, of course, there's the side of, I can't believe this. Why would I even think there's anything of value that I have to say here? Mm. So the woodlands and the sofa give me time to do that kind of filtering, to see what seems really true, not what's my good idea, but what's true writing for me. How I call it, like close to the bone is what I call it. I feel like it's really close. Natalie Goldberg, I did some writing workshops with, and she has a book called Writing Down the Bones. So that helps me. And I just, to close on that, I find that the actual writing time in proportion to the actual relaxation, let it flow through time, that through this last couple of years, I need more of the relaxation time than I need the writing time. And that my writing time is much more efficient if I let it float for a while and then know when it's time to write it. And so I don't waste as much time that way. I've wasted lots of time. Most of it seems like a waste of time. Not most, but a lot.
But it's not.
To let that editing process happen in that way, where I go back to what feels true. I go back to the writing and say, no, that's good. That's on the mark there. And this, I don't think so. But I need the reflective time to be able to see that.
What's your next word? Next
word is how. And I kind of went over that a bit, because the poetry is what I pretty much described. I will usually get a thought, get a download, get something, have an idea. At poetry, I started with the windows in front, to put poetry up. That came in 2013 when we had first moved in, and we had those display windows that the former artist Gene Bennett used for his art. And Ken said, well, I can put something up on the panels. And I said, well, what am I going to do? He said, well, put poetry in there. Poetry in the window? I mean, what? So that's how that started. So the poetry is the how. I kind of say I get the downloads. I find with writing poetry, I haven't really studied writing poetry or writing at all. But again, I take the random thoughts, I put them, jumble them together, see what sticks on the page, decide at a certain point if there should be a rhyme here, if there should be rhythm here, if there should be, what's the structure of it. And I really find out what does it want to be more than what I try to make it be. And when I find I'm working too hard on a poem, especially, I let it go. And I feel like I let the poems go before they're probably ready, but that feels good to me somehow, especially when we had deadlines and I was going to have to put one up every month. It was like, oh, okay, this is just, here, Ken, print it, put it up. And sometimes they were fine, sometimes not so great, but that helped me to learn to post things, almost like publish in the front window without worrying that they were really great poems. And that's been very helpful. It was a quick example. The first poem I wrote for that was in January, I guess that was 2013, something like that. And I was walking in the woodlands and I came home and I wrote this down, just free form. And then I put it in verse, and it starts, yesterday, walking through the Beekman woods, a tree stopped me. It was only then I realized how brisk my pace, my thoughts whirling, as fast as my feet, my breath short and shallow. The tree's stillness startled me. I paused. I looked. I saw the light brushing of frost on its upturned needles. This is how we winter here, it said. Allow the coldness to relieve you of your ambition. Rest Be still. Notice the quiet within. Spring will be here soon enough. And that came straight through. And I just gave it some structure. But that also was how I learned to live in Jacksonville, because I'd never lived in winter weather like this.
Yes.
So it taught me in writing it down.
Yeah.
With the other writing, the Enneagram, I'll just say briefly, that was a whole complex thing. You helped me a lot. Well, first of all, you helped me by saying this should be a book.
I did do that.
Yeah. And the next thing is you told me about Scrivener, that wonderful program, software for writers. So what happened with that is that I had to start with the content that I had, which was the old field guide that I had. And then I'd put all that in there. And then I created, I would call it bins. I just did dumps. When things came through, I would put it in a bin and worry about it later. And I can't go into the whole process, but basically what I want to say is that I kept working on what I thought I wanted to write. And then it was like, it kept taking me somewhere. And what kept coming to me is what I wanted to say and what the book wanted me to say. And I don't know how better to describe that. But we were kind of, if I was too willpower driven, it wasn't going to be good. Mm-hmm. And if I was too loose, it wasn't going to be good. So again, trying to find that sweet spot. And so it was a process of writing, editing, not editing, showing it. Ken was my first reader usually, and he's my canary in the coal mine. If I'm too out there, intellectual, blah, blah, he's just like, no. But if I show him something and he goes, good. And he doesn't, that's all he says. You know? Yeah. And he'll get in there with me. But what I want to close with on this is to say, for me, collaboration made all the difference, because I worked with Nancy as my illustrator and I worked with Ken as the designer, and the three of us together formed some kind of alliance. We were both working on the same thing without talking about exactly what it was, but we knew we were moving towards something. Mm-hmm. So as I said last night, Ken's design forced me to condense things. And then the cross-pollination, doing poetry, came into the writing because it forced me to distill down to the simplest things what I wanted to say, mm-hmm. and get rid of all the extraneous. The simplicity, and became an art book. That was important to me. Mm-hmm. So the simplicity and the aesthetics became important. The who, first point on that is who, me? I'm gonna write. I'm an author. Come on, you know. Great. About the who, my audience, I did write a proposal, so I knew what I was aiming for in that book. And then the writing itself began to teach me who I was really writing for or what to do with that. So that was really that process. And I want to, let's see, where do I have this thing? I just want to tell you, we have 5 minutes just to keep you abreast of the time. Then let me finish here. On my writing desk upstairs, I have this and this. This is a block, very heavy pewter block that says writers. And you fill in the blank block. And this is something came from a novel I read, and it's there to inspire me. It is this. It's from Muriel Barbary, from The Elegance of the Hedgehog. The lines gradually become their own demiurge, which I learned is kind of like your muse. And like some witless yet miraculous participant, I witnessed the birth on paper of sentences that have eluded my will and appear in spite of me on the sheet, teaching me something that I neither knew nor thought I want to know. It is a painless birth, like an unsolicited proof. It gives me untold pleasure, and with neither toil nor certainty, but the joy of frank astonishment, I follow the pen that is guiding and supporting me. And I pray that I can have days like that. I have time to close with my Frank's 8 rules for writing, but I'll stop if that's the time we have. Well, you have 3 minutes. Oh, okay. This was free writing, and then it became 8 rules, okay? Okay. Start anywhere and follow it, number 1. Number 2, don't get attached to any of it. Number 3, let the writing be a little ahead of you. I always felt that what I was doing was just out of my reach, which means number 4, let yourself be uncomfortable, allowing for patches of pleasure. Some people love to write. I don't. So to me, the pleasure is from knowing that the right words have appeared. And that happens once in a while, but not most of the time. 5, let writing be about discovery. Begin with what you know or what you think you know and what you think you want to say. Be brave enough to move towards what you do not know. And that really helped me with this book. Let the writing tell you what it wants to be. Number 7, the writing will tell you when you're there. Number 8, take all feedback from anyone, anywhere, anyhow. And 9, surrender. Surrender to the process.
Surrender, Dorothy. Will you give me those points sometime? Mm-hmm. I'll post them somewhere. That's wonderful.
Yeah. But thank you. It really, like I said, I had not thought about all this until you gave me the questions.
Well, you know, sometimes I don't think we think of ourselves as writers, and we have to really stop and think about it. And like you said, who, me?
I still have that in my head.
Well, I do too, but you know, I have 11 books. I think I have to call myself a writer. And even when it's garbage, you know, I know that something's going to come out of it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Frank. This is absolutely wonderful. Thanks
for the opportunity.
Awesome. And I will talk to you later. Don't go away.
I'm going to be watching, Jean.
You can go away for a moment.
I want to hear how a fiction writer writes, because that's a mystery to me.
Okay, well, that's next.
Maybe on me. Okay.
Coming up next.
All righty. Bye.
All right, dear. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So my next guest is Jean Lukemire. Jean is the author of 2 previous novels, Inside the Mind of Martin Mueller and Penitentiary Tales, a love story. His novel In Progress, My Year at the Good Bean Cafe, is a radical departure from his previous work, and it explores unlikely and inexplicable events and how they impact our lives. Jean says that everything he's learned about the process of fiction is brought to bear in his latest work. Welcome, Jean.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Thank you very much for coming. And you too can start anywhere you want.
Well, I'm going to start by saying that one of the things that I do as a writer is steal other people's material. So I'm going to start with stealing Frank's 9 steps, because
right.
of them are so appropriate. I can just follow that formula and make my way. I will start with who do I write for? And I was advised many times to know who my target audience is and tailor my writing towards that. If I want to have an audience, that's what I have to do. I've chosen to ignore that advice, maybe at my peril, and instead follow the advice that I received from my late brother long ago. And he said, if you want to have a following, run up a flag and see who salutes. So my stories are my flags. I just write them, and my target audience is whoever reads them and appreciates them. So I write for, actually I'm not writing for them, I'm writing for the integrity of the story. I want the story to, as Frank was saying, be true to itself. And you know when that is happening. And I also write for the characters in the story. I feel that I owe them something. I have to be true to the characters and not try to manipulate them and have them do things that they wouldn't do just in order to move the plot along. And so I listen to my characters, and in fact, quite often we have conversations, And, you know, they say, no, I don't want to do that. And I said, well, you know, we have to get along here because we're not going to get to the end of the story, you know, unless we, you know, come to some kind of agreement that you have to do this and you have to do that. But then my end of the agreement is that I don't have them do something that is not natural to them. So I really have to know my characters, and because the story is not going to happen and be a true story unless the characters are consistently believable, organic,
Yes.
and true.
I just want to say one thing about that.
Yeah.
I studied the Enneagram. I've been studying the Enneagram with Frank for quite a number of years. And about 3 years ago, I think, I started with my characters assigning them each an Enneagram number.
Wow.
So that I could refer to that number and keep my characters honest in that way so that they're acting true to form. And it's really helped a lot because I have a little cheat sheet and I have it near me with all the numbers I've assigned. And it really is a great tool for me to say, oh, you know, he wouldn't do that. That is so out of character. Right. So it kind of helps me keep that part organized. So please proceed.
Well, one technique that I learned to do, and I do it pretty often, is that when I have a character in mind, I have like a role that I need a character to fill, and I have to get to know the character, and so I interview the character. I have them sit down across the table from me, and let's say their name is Frank. And I say, Frank, tell me a little bit about yourself. Let's start with the basics. You know, where were you born? How did you grow up? What was your family like? What was your childhood like? And then tell me what you wanted out of life and whether you got it and what the obstacles were. And just, you know, let me know who you are. And they start talking. And I'm not telling them what to say, I'm just listening. And what I found is that not only are they giving me the facts that I'm asking for, but they're doing it with a certain tone of voice. Then suddenly they have an accent, then they have an attitude. And then I'm just sitting, all I'm doing is I'm a stenographer. I'm just writing down what they say, writing down the interview. And that's been very successful for me because by the time it's over, I know the character. The character knows that I know them. They know what I know what to expect of them, and they know what to expect of me. And it's like a kind of like a virtual reality kind of.
Sure. Yeah.
Thing.
Wonderful. That's wonderful.
In fact, what I'm writing right now, the book that I'm writing right now, the main character is an author. So I created him. He's writing a book. So this is like what they call metafiction, which is a book, a story about itself and how it came about.
Yeah.
So this character that I created, who is an author, is writing, and he has characters that he's creating. So he interviews them. So I'm back here and it's like 3 dimensions deep. I'm here. I've got a character that I created. I know him. He's creating characters and he's interviewing them to get to know them. And I'm just watching it all happen.
That's great.
I think it's weird.
It's definitely an alternate reality. And so where do you do most of your writing?
Well, a lot of places, but I could say that I remember reading one time James Thurber was at a party with his wife. And it was a very lively party and everybody's having conversation and drinking cocktails. And James Thurber is over in a corner all by himself. And his wife is on the other side of the room. And finally, she walks across the room and goes up to her husband and says, James, quit writing. Because you're writing everywhere if you write in the middle of something. But when I'm putting myself in a place to write, I often go to Goodbean. Actually, until the Omicron surge, I would go every morning from 6 until 12. And
Wow.
and I would get a lot done, and it worked. I've written in coffee shops and libraries a lot. You have to be careful in libraries because, well, here's a little story about what might happen at a library. When I write dialogue, it's very important that it's like sounds just like the characters are going to sound, and it's their vernacular and their vocabulary and the rhythm of their sentences. And to get that rhythm and to make that dialogue authentic, you really have to say it out loud. You have to read it out loud, because it might sound right in your head, but then when you start speaking it, it's no longer smooth, it's clunky. And so I would go to the library on this one particular occasion. And when I go to the library, I'd wear noise canceling headphones so that I'm tuning everything out. And on this particular day, I was writing a conversation between a couple of people who, very urban, gritty, gnarly folks. And when they spoke, you're going to hear the most vile language, expletives and racial epithets. So here I am at the library, and I got my earphones on, and I'm really into this. And suddenly I get a tapping on my shoulder and take off my earphones, and I look up, and it's the librarian. And she's going, shh. Said, sir, you're talking out loud. And then I look up, and everybody in the library is staring at me. They probably thought I had, Tourette's syndrome. I hope so. But libraries, bookstores, 2 o'clock in the morning in bed, you're trying to sleep, but something comes to you, jump up, go downstairs, spend a half hour, and then try to go back to sleep. It's not easy.
Wow, you do get up and write in the middle of the night?
A few times. I don't like to. I lay there and I go, no, you'll remember it. You'll remember it. Just tell it to yourself. And when you wake up in the morning, it'll still be there, but half the time it's not. So sometimes I will get up and go to the laptop at 2 in the morning.
And why do you do it?
Well, it's because there's some magic. There's a miracle going on. You get these images and ideas in your head, and then you put them down on paper using little symbols, language. And then a year later, or 100 years later, or 1,000 years later, on the other side of the world, someone is looking at it, they decode those symbols, and all those ideas and images appear magically in their head across time and space. It's like violating the rules of physics, and just being part of that process, knowing that I'm part of that process, makes me feel like it's all worthwhile.
Magic. It's all magic.
And I do it, it's a way of making people think that you're smarter than you are. Because you can, you can spend hours and hours doing research to create a character who's a doctor or a physicist or psychotherapist. And the reader thinks you really know something about this, but what you've really done is just condense all of that into a couple of paragraphs and create the illusion of knowing and being an expert in a certain field when you're not. Did
you write as a child, as a young person?
Actually, not very much, but some. I wrote a book. I was probably in the 6th grade. It was maybe 20 pages long, and it was a story about some guys who went off in a rocket ship and went into the Milky Way, and then they had to put on their diving suits because there was a leak in the rocket and the milk from the Milky Way was flooding the cabin. And I put all that together and stapled it down the middle and folded it over and drew a picture on the front, and I had my first novel.
I had my first book. I did my first book at 9, and I did it the very same way. It was called How to Be Obnoxious in 25 Easy Lessons.
Oh, really?
Inspired by my brother, who was annoyed with me, who asked me to do that. And so I said, okay, so I will. So I did. I wish I still had that book. Do you still have yours?
No. Did you dedicate your book to your brother?
Of course. Yes, he's never let me forget it.
Well, let's see what else I have. We're making early in the morning. I got the 6 to 12 because I read one time that when Hemingway was doing right in the middle of a project, those were his favorite hours.
6 to 12 in the morning.
6 to 12, yeah, 6 to 12 in the morning.
And are you, when you start writing something in particular, like doing these stories at the Good Bean, do you get structured, really structured in it, and like, you know, more than Frank, for instance, and maybe more like me, because I have to structure certain times. And so I get really kind of dedicated to those times. I can feel 2 o'clock coming along if I'm get ready because I get to do this for the next 2 or 3 hours.
I definitely plan. And in fact, what I'm working on right now, there are 12 stories in this collection, and they're related so that there's like an overriding narrative that will make these 12 different stories into a novel. And I have each story, the chapter title, each story is a chapter, and the chapter title begins with January, and then a subtitle. And so there are 12 stories, and my goal and what I'm doing right now is making sure that I write each one of these stories within 1 month. So I know right now exactly what story I'm writing. The story that I was writing for January, I just finished today, as a matter of fact. And on the 1st of February, I will begin the next story, and I know what story it is, and I intend to finish it by February and start the 3rd story, and I know what story that's going to be. So I have the entire year laid out, and I try to adhere to that.
So when you're structuring a story, do you create an outline, or do you have the story mapped out in your mind in any way, or do you just kind of keep the thoughts in your head and say, "Ooh, I'm going to write about that"? I mean, I can get really structured about setting it up for myself. So how do you do that?
Well, each story actually is a little different. I might start with a theme, so that, for example, I want to do a story where the theme is vengeance. That's all that I know, and I don't have a character yet, and I don't know, what he is gaining vengeance about. But I start with that, and then I create a character who is wronged in some way, so that he can seek vengeance. So then I build around that. Another approach would be to start with a climactic scene, a really dramatic scene, and make that the end of the story. And then I go, well, what led up to that? And then I'll back up and back up and back up to maybe a scene that's like a peaceful. You got a character, you got some nice things going on. So I know it's starting here and it's ending there. And then I've got to figure out how to get there. And then what I'm doing a lot in this current book is using a technique of saying, what if? What if you're driving down the road all by yourself and it's a clear day, not a cloud in the sky, and suddenly a body falls from the sky and bounces off your windshield? That is one of the stories, one of the 12 stories, and that's all that I knew. That story's already been written, and I didn't know anything else. All I knew is that this body bounces off the windshield. And then I had to create characters and a plot and a reason and answer all the questions. And then those questions are who, what, where, when, why, which I use for no matter what technique I'm doing, I can always fall back on those questions. And if I can answer those, you pretty much have a story.
Uh-huh. So, okay, so say you finished the January story today. Yay, you finished the story. Between the time you started and today, what was the path? I mean, did you write the whole thing and then start revising right away, or do you revise as you go? You know, do you get to the end like today, you're finished with it? Do you put it away and then go back to it and rewrite, or do you feel like you're done today?
No, not done. 90% done. At one time in the beginning or earlier in my writing, I would try to just go through a first draft, like speed writing, and save all the revision until I got to the end. Now I revise a little bit more as I go. I might do a page or even a paragraph, and then I keep going back to it and fine tuning it. But what I'm doing now is I'm giving myself a month to do the story, and then putting aside, knowing that when all 12 of them are done, I'm going to go back and give each one of them another 2 weeks of revision, because then when I go back, it's been almost a year since I wrote it.
Yeah.
Now it's fresh. And when I look at something that I wrote weeks or months or a year ago, it's as though somebody else wrote it. And I see things that I couldn't see when I was, you know, you can't see the forest for the trees.
Mm-hmm.
So I go back to it like, oh, I can't believe I wrote that. That's terrible. And then I can go in and so that's what I'm doing now is when I'm finished, I have about 6 more stories to go. And when I'm finished with those 6, I'll go back and start at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And the first story is going to change radically because of the subsequent stories, all connected.
Mm-hmm.
So I might write the first story, and then when I get to the 7th story or the 12th story and I have a character in there, I might want to take that character and plant him in the first story as kind of a minor character. And then later on, it'd be as though I knew this all along, that I was going to do this. And it looks like I had this great, you know, complete plan, and I didn't.
That's fabulous. So it is 5:50 right now. I want to make sure we have time for your reading. You're going to read something for us that you have written.
I am. And it is from the work in progress. And it is called The Body That Fell from the Sky.
Oh.
Just coincidentally. This is just an excerpt from it. A character, Dr. Charles Rimbaud, a surgeon from Tufts Medical School in Boston, has inherited a piece of property in Bisbee, Arizona, where he grew up. He decides to claim his inheritance and do the paperwork in person. He flies into Tucson and he spends the night at the Westward Look Resort. So here is his first-person narrative. The next morning, after a dip in the pool and a hearty breakfast of huevos rancheros and chorizo, I left Tucson for Bisbee. I stopped at Sonoita Vineyards for a flight of wine, then at picturesque and funky Arizona hops and vines for another. I was feeling warm and fuzzy when I passed through Sierra Vista, the hummingbird capital of the world. I marveled at the giant saguaro cacti that loom over the landscape like mindless giants, waiting to enfold you in their prickly embrace. They often haunted my dreams when I was a child. East of Sierra Vista, I crossed the bridge over the San Pedro River. There was little traffic. The sky was a cloudless blue. The sun was dipping toward the western horizon. Ahead, on the shoulder of the road, a car was pulled over. A long white Lincoln Continental. The driver's side door was open and the hood was up. A woman stood beside the car and waved. I pulled over behind her. She approached. "Can you help me?" she said. She was an appealing 40-something woman in a tight dress that ended halfway down her firm thighs. She leaned into my driver's side window. The top 2 buttons of her blouse were undone. I could see the lace of her bra and smell her perfume. "I'm not a mechanic," I said, "but I can give you a lift into Bisbee." "Please," she said. She retrieved a shoulder bag from her car and got on the passenger side of mine. I pulled onto the road. "I'm Rose," she said. She offered a hand. Her fingers were cool and dry. "Charles Rimbaud," I said with a polite smile. She frowned. "Dr. Rimbaud?" she said. "Yes," I said, "the one and only. Do you know me?" No, I thought I might have heard the name." She turned her face away. I watched the road. I saw a tiny speck in the empty sky. A solitary bird winging its way home, I supposed, but it grew larger as I watched and spun slowly. Before I could say the word body, it ricocheted with a horrendous whump off the windshield on the passenger side and vaulted over the top of the car. I swerved to the left too late and slid into the ravine on the far side of the road. The windshield was riddled with spidery cracks, but otherwise intact. Rose stared ahead with wide eyes and an open mouth. "Are you all right?" I said. "What was it?" she said. "I don't know," I said. "You stay here." I opened my door. The car was tilted into the ravine. I slid out and crossed the road. There, pinioned like a voodoo doll on the needles of 15-foot saguaro cactus, hung a body in a 3-piece pinstripe suit. The face was smashed beyond recognition. Curiously, there was no blood. Rose came up alongside me. "That suit," she said. A county sheriff's car braked to a halt behind us. The deputy approached. "Evening, Rose," he said. "What do we have here?" 2 hours later, 6 sheriff's cars, a tow truck, a fire truck, and an ambulance cast their spinning lights into the night sky. A portable searchlight shone upon the platform of a crane where several men examined the pinioned corpse. I witnessed this bizarre spectacle from the back seat of a cop's cruiser where, following a failed field sobriety test, I sat handcuffed and charged with driving while intoxicated and suspicion of vehicular manslaughter. My assertion that I had not struck the body but had been struck by it was to no avail. It was Sunday night in Bisbee. There would not be a judge till morning. I spent the night in the Cochise County Jail. I did not sleep well.
No, I guess not.
Now what?
Okay, I can't wait to read that story.
Okay.
What a picture. What a picture you just painted just there. Wow. Thank you so much. I really don't have anything I could add to that. That was just, you know, you in Penitentiary Tales, you created such a visual experience of those people in that penitentiary living their lives. It was so colorfully painted. That's all I can really say about it. So you really do paint wonderful pictures with your words. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you.
I have no questions on our list tonight. And so I think what I will do unless Jean has a parting remark or Frank would like to say something. Do you have anything else you'd like to say, Jean?
I have on my laptop a little saying, I think it's in Persian, banat, banjai, which means making, someday made. So no matter how, impossible it seems to finish something, I know that if you just put one word in front of another and keep adding those words, eventually you're going to be finished. So don't be discouraged when it's a long, long project.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Dr. DeLuca?
Of course I have one more things I forgot. One, I didn't answer why. And for the Enneagram book, especially kindness, it was really, if one person can feel something from that and it changes the way they see someone in their life, I will have succeeded. And that was my goal. And the second thing I want to say is a reminder, I printed 5 drafts of that book before we got to the last one, so we could look at it and see it and read it, see if it held. And that was a very helpful thing to see that. And I had 20 readers at the end who read for me to give me feedback. But I forget about all the things I actually did do. But mainly it was that why, I think, and that's the kind of work that I love. Even the poetry, I don't think about it, it's going to change people, but is there something true from my experience? If I put it out there, it may touch somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought yours is the same, Jean, you know, your work in a different way. But I like what you say about it's a magical thing. You put it out there and you have no idea. Mm-hmm. And this is my first experience of putting a book out that's going a little more far reaching. And it's a very remarkable experience so far. Mm-hmm.
I really picked the 2 right people to do this live stream tonight. Thank you so much. I have nothing to add. I am really, really pleased and am so grateful that you were here. I learned things that I didn't know about writing. I want your points, Frank. I want to spend more time with both of you. Let's just talk about writing. Maybe we should just do this again sometime.
Over wine next time.
I'm sorry?
Over wine next time.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Ginna. Thank you,
Thank
David.
You. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jean. Thank you to Ann Brooke. All of our books are available at Art Presence and other places wherever books are sold. So thank you all very much. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you all, and have a really, really lovely evening and weekend.
Thank you, Ginna. Thank you, Jean.
Pleasure. Thanks, Jean.
Thank you, Frank. See you guys.
Good night, all.